do a quick roll call. Let's make sure we have everybody.
Lisa Chambliss,
Here.
Audrey Jones,
Here.
Ryan Othus,
Here.
Christina Shull, I don't see her in the meeting list either.
Yeah, I don't see her either. Looks like that corner, right?
4 corners.
4. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Right. Audrey, were you on here?
Someone say something about Audrey.
I was just seeing if you were there. I saw your name. Hey, Matthew.
Yes.
So we're waiting for Christina Shull.
She's not coming.
Oh, she's not attending. All right. So whenever you're ready.
Excellent. The Board of Electrologists and Body Arts Practitioners meeting is convening at 10:03 a.m. on September 12th, 2022 at the Health Licensing Office in Salem, Oregon by telephone conference call. I will now call roll. Matthew Holmes, present. Lisa Chambliss,
Present.
Audrey Jones,
Present.
Ryan Othus.
I'm here.
Christina Shull will not be joining us today. Members, when you wish to speak, please state your last name for the record. Board members are asked to not use the chat feature during meetings. Public members wishing to speak must first sign in on the roster sheet available. For public members calling in on the public phone line, please email April Fleming at april.fleming@dhsa.state.or.us and provide your first and last name. Public and interested parties' feedback may be heard during the public/interested parties feedback period if indicated on the agenda. Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners, and protocol when conducting board business. This meeting is called to order.
All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Paul Bothwell with the Health Licensing Office. First item on the agenda was, or the second item was to introduce Christina Shull, but she's not going to be here. So we can move on to number 3 and do an approval of the agenda. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the agenda? And does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, this is Ryan Othus. I move to approve the agenda.
This is Lisa Chambliss. I second.
A motion has been made. I'll call the roll. Matthew Holmes, aye. Lisa Chambliss,
Aye.
Audrey Jones,
Aye.
Ryan Othus,
Aye.
and a motion has been passed.
All right.
I don't know if I've ever spoken so slowly in my life.
You're fine. We can hear you. You're nice and clear. So next on the items for board action is approve proposed administrative rules for electrology. And I'm going to step out of the way and Sammy's going to step in.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
So everybody got their materials, I assume. And I don't know, did you have a chance to look through the proposed rules for electrology? It was mailed out on Friday. If not, don't fear, I will go over everything in detail.
This is Matthew Holmes. I did read through it, but I'd love to hear you read it to us again.
Okay, so unless you object, I'm just gonna kind of give you a basic overview of what Cerinthia and I have done. And then we'll go over the draft rules specifically, like in depth. And then we'll go over the fiscal impact that the REC and the agency came up with. And then we will approve the proposed rules with any changes that you guys may have. Cerinthia held a qualification committee and met with some subject matter experts and drafted up the 600-hour training program, recommended 600-hour training program, and a 600-hour education program that would be taught at schools. Training program under a supervisor. Then the RAC met, and all the recommendations that were given to the qualification committee were then given to the RAC. The RAC had a really good turnout of people who attended. We had several communities represented. We had Sheila Ahern. Who else did we have? We had Sheila, Seth Johnstone, several people. It's in the report. And then they met. And so if you guys approve today, the schedule would go like this. I would file proposed rules, Secretary of State, October 1st. We have 28 days of comment. We would have a hearing October 19th where anybody could come and give verbal comment. And then the cutoff time for written comment would be October 28th. And then the board would adopt permanent rules after considering the hearings officer report and any public comment November 7th. And then we would have them in place by January 1, which would give Cerinthia time and me time to outreach to all the stakeholders, letting them know the training program's up and running, what the process they need to do administratively to get everything approved, and then give applicants actually time to get their temporary license. Sorry, I have froggy throat. I don't know why. Maybe the smoke in the air. So that's that. Moving on to the draft rules, which I will share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
It's Matthew Holmes. We can.
Okay, so I'm just going to start from the top. Anytime you have questions, chime in. If things are not understandable, I mean, there's a lot of changes, and it kind of mirrors how we did the body piercing training program, but there are some differences.
Is there a way? Sorry to interrupt, but for members in the audience or documents so they could see that as well. And can the committee members still see that?
I don't know. Can you see my draft rules still?
This is Matthew Holmes. Now I've got a blank desktop now.
Do they have copies?
We can see it now.
Okay, I moved it back. I'm going to make copies here real quick. Give me 1 second, guys. We have some people in the actual audience for the first time since COVID. So I'm going to make them some copies of the meeting material since we can't share with you guys and have it on the screen for them to see.
Oh, welcome back to the real world.
Yes, exciting.
What printer?
21 by Trampus.
I know. Like a person.
Okay, it's a coming. Okay, well, that prints. So I have it up on the screen, and if there's changes as we go, I can actually make changes in real time, which is how I prefer. If things get convoluted and jumbled, I can always stop and just take notes and do it later. So first thing to start off, and sometimes when you go through definitions, it seems it's easier to refer back to them because they don't make a lot of sense necessarily here because we define things when we use it more than one time in rules. So I'll just quickly go through them, and then within the rules, you'll actually see how it fits. So we defined, amended the current definition of direct supervision and defined it as means a supervisor is on site and immediately accessible and in view of the practical procedure to provide guidance and instruction to the temporary trainee. So there was a lot of conversation about this, but at the end of the day, what they landed on was they had to be on site, immediately accessible, and in view. In view could be like maybe they're monitoring them by computer, but they would have to be immediately accessible. So maybe like in an office around the corner. So on site, immediately accessible, which isn't defined, but immediate, and then in view. So whether it be in view face-to-face or in view just in another room that's immediately accessible. And then to provide guidance and instruction to the temporary trainee. We didn't actually define school or education institution before, so we're adding this new. And the reason why is, and I'm going to refer to cosmetology here. We have schools inside high school programs and inside community colleges. And we have had in the past couple of years requests for information on how they would get. We actually had one for electrology, and we've had several for tattooing, wanting to know if they could get a program up and running inside prisons and inside career schools, or inside high school. So a high school could be Oregon Youth Authority. They have high schools affiliated. And so that could be, that's where the high school piece comes in for cosmetology, is based on high school being inside an Oregon Youth Authority facility. Does that make sense? So it's just giving us the option in the future, if it happens, that they can then be approved based on the curriculum and all the things required. And this will carry over to everybody's rules in all fields of practice as we start making those changes for you guys as we go down the road. Does all that make sense? But hear nothing, I'm just going to keep going. We amended official transcript to align with other official transcripts. The biggest thing we've added is adding the final practical examination score. And briefly just going to tell you why is the Rules Advisory Committee and Qualification Committee is proposing that the practical not be HLO administered, which we're already actually doing. The school is administering it, but we don't have a school. So we're moving to a school can administer it, or a supervisor could administer it on site at their facility where they're teaching electrology. So that's the biggest piece here. And we'll go more in depth about the practical exam and the written exam as we go down below. So the first, I'm moving, well, you guys can see can you guys see what I'm doing still, right? Yes, you can. Yes.
It's Matthew Holmes. Yes, we can.
So the first piece is the education program for electrology. We know there's no schools, not currently. I don't know that they're done. They're just not providing services. We want to keep this in place in case we do have schools to come up in the future. So the curriculum committee met, as I said, and went through all of this. Remember, we started this process in 2021, and then we got put on hold. COVID and just some other random things I had went wrong. And then this kind of came up to the forefront as far as, on a statewide level. This is important to have more electrologists so people can get services, especially speaking in terms of like gender reassignment surgery and getting their permanent hair removal prior to that. So that's what really brought this all up to the surface and made us really get into the nuts and bolts of this. So the committee kept with the 600-hour program. That didn't change. They did, and Sarinthia can weigh in here as well. She's actually the more of the expert in this arena. I just typed it out really, and then made the changes from the record. So what they would do is 200 hours of theory instruction, 400 hours of practical experience, and those practical experience would be also procedures. So it breaks down the 200 hours of theory and what domains, which you can see. And if you go to G, it talks about the devices, so 20 hours in a galvanic, 20 hours in thermolysis, manual and flash, combination of electrolysis and thermolysis blend. So each of those would be 24 hours, 20 hours in the theory. As part of the approved curriculum. So procedures, 400 procedures. This was an in-depth discussion here. So they landed on 20 electrolysis, 46 thermolysis, manual, 46 for thermolysis flash, and combination electrolysis and thermolysis. The piece that's not interesting but different is that in order to start practicing those procedures, the student must observe the teacher teaching the 12 of those procedures before the student or the trainee student starts practicing. However, they can do 12 procedures of electrolysis and then the student can start performing electrolysis. Does that make sense? Did I totally botch that explanation?
This is Matthew Holmes. I'm tracking so far.
Okay, good. Thank you. So there's that. And then they also have to do 230 more procedures of any one of the combinations. And that's to bring them up to the 400. And then this gets into more administrative and procedural stuff in the school. So there's the demonstration. So the training may begin providing practical procedures once they have observed the supervisor. Education must be conducted by a qualified electrologist who is recognized by an educational institution, so a school. And then a school goes through Higher Education Coordinating Commission to get approved. Teachers would normally be registered through them. The student-teacher ratio of performing procedures is 4 to 1 student at one time. So the teacher can observe 4 people. However, they can have more. That's under supervision. Forget that I said that. So 4 to 1. And then a piece that we added is, so this is a real broad stroke of the curriculum. Cerinthia's document is much more detailed in nature, breaks down what you're being taught under theory more specifically, and then what you have to learn under the services more specifically.
And everyone should have received that, the curriculum, excuse me, this is Cerinthia. The curriculum and the training program on Friday that showed you the detail that Sammy's talking about.
Did everyone hear that? I'll just repeat it. Cerinthia, I think April actually mailed it out, emailed the curriculum in the detailed document and the training program detailed document, which we're not going to look at that in depth, but if you want to look through it, you can. We're basically adopting those documents under 8 of this rule, saying that big package, this is what the board is adopting, and moving forward, this is what the school would teach. Number 9.
Sammy,
Did
can I interrupt
everyone
you for a
get that
second?
document?
Okay, we have a question.
This is Ryan Othis. Yeah, I received it in an email and I've looked it over.
Okay. Was there someone else?
Audrey has her hand up.
Yes,
Oh, thanks. I can't see Audrey. I'm sorry. Can't see
No
who
worries.
has their hand up and stuff.
this is Audrey, and I have just a question about, let's see here, what number is it? Where did it go? Okay, so number 6, education must be conducted by a qualified Oregon licensed electrologist and who is recognized by an educational institution. What does that last part of the sentence mean? Like, how would somebody be able to do the trainee program and be an instructor? What would they need to do?
So this is this is being a school. So, and we can make this clearer. They would be a Higher Education Coordinating Commission licensed teacher, registered teacher. If you want to make that clear, that's all that means, is that they're recognized by the educational institution, which it might be better saying that they're registered through HEC.
And that's for if they're going to be doing the trainee program too, or is that just for if they're teaching in a school?
Just to school.
Okay, so this does not apply to the trainee program. How is there somewhere that lists what they would need for the trainee program? Is that in a
Yes.
separate spot?
There's
Okay.
a whole nother rule for them.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just gonna make a note here. Okay,
And this is Ryan Othis. Sorry, when you finish making your note, I had a question as well.
yeah, please.
Yeah, who is going to be regulating the outside institutions? Is that going to be under the purview of the like HEC, as you said, or the HLO?
For schools,
Yeah.
it's Higher Education Coordinating Commission.
Okay.
They license them, take on their renewals, make sure they're teaching the core competencies. We approve the actual curriculum. And
Okay.
can request to review that, and if they have any changes, they would provide that to us for reapproval.
Okay.
So we do fit in that model, but we just have a different piece. The training program would actually go through us.
Okay. Is there like a supposed outcome that's expected from the training programs that's going to be shared across like platforms here? Because I can see the schools and institutions may have a specific outcome that they're trying to reach or sell to. And I'm wondering if that would be congruent with people who are doing it privately.
Yes.
It's consistent.
Do you mean is the program the same?
Yeah. Like, would it always be like, would if somebody's doing this privately, would they be teaching the exact same curriculum across the board?
Yes.
Yeah. And the outcomes of these training programs would be to what, license a person so that they could practice it privately or in an institution? Like, what would be the outcome of those?
Oh, so yeah, so they'd be able to practice on the general public under a body art facility license.
All right, thank you.
Good question. So the next piece is the approved training program. So this looks a lot like, well, it looks very much like the education we just went through, 1 through 1 through 5, exactly the same. And after starting at 6 is where it gets different. This will go to your questions, Audrey. So the training must be conducted by an office-approved supervisor. So in order to be a supervisor, there'll be an application, which is down further that we'll talk about. And basically, it's no disciplinary action, current or pending, 2 years experience out of the last 5, and then obviously have an active electrology license. So it's pretty easy. There's no fee for the supervisor form. It's just basically documentation so we can attach it to that temporary trainee. So this is where the number 7, we talk about the direct supervision. So this is where that comes into play. Okay, we do have somebody on the phone. It's Jamie Bloom, and we don't really take comments until.
Just recognize her.
I could have Matthew ask that. Matthew?
Yeah.
Jamie Bloom is on the phone and has a comment. Generally, we would wait till public interested parties feedback, but you could choose as the chair to have her comment now.
I mean, I would like to keep to the order of things so that we can just get through all these rules as seamlessly as possible. And Ms. Bloom could possibly write down her question and ask at the appropriate time.
Yeah.
Or comment.
Yes, so Jamie, hopefully you can hear me. We're gonna wait till public and interested parties feedback. And then of course, once rules are filed, public comment can be accepted. We'll have a hearing, all of those things will take place. Did you get that, Jamie? Did she get muted, Nate? I'm just gonna keep on going. So training approved supervisor, like I said, application, which there's a more specific rule down farther. The direct supervision, so everything under 4A through D. So the 20, 46, 46, 46 needs to be in direct supervision, and then the 230 would be indirect supervision. So an indirect supervision is defined under 8. We don't actually define it in definitions. We do use it more than once. I'll think about that. I might, and you guys can weigh in on this. it might make more sense to define indirect supervision so it stays consistent, since we do use it more than once, I believe. So I'm gonna make a note of that here.
This is Ryan Oathis. After you finish your note there, I had another question.
Okay. Okay, by all means, Ryan.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's like a time of validity or like how long the procedures would remain valid. Let's say that somebody were to be in school and then like possibly have some type of circumstance that pulls them out. Is there like an expiration on the course requisites as to like if somebody does one, then they have like X amount of time to finish the course?
No. No, there wouldn't be like an expiration date once they have got the training. Now, I suppose if they got the training and then the training changed, like say they took a long hiatus and the training changed, and if there's more requirements, they may have to get up to those requirements, but would still count that experience or education that they
Okay.
received.
Yeah, my thought would be like if there's reciprocity, right? Because I see like two things happening. What if somebody goes from a private instruction to a school-based thing or vice versa, and there's a time lapse between it? You know, if the things that they've done, let's say they got halfway through the program in one space and they decided to finish it in another, if that was possible, right?
Yes,
If there'd
so
be,
what we would.
yeah,
what
sorry.
we- Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. I
So
got
what
the
would
question.
happen if, say they started at a career school, we would get the transcript for what they completed. And then if they moved to a supervision in a body art facility, then they would give us the final, as a name.
Certification of completion.
Yeah, final certification of completion. And then we would just marry the two in our documentation.
Okay, and who would be in control of those?
In what sense?
Which piece?
Like are the records going to be kept individually by the person so they can transfer them, or is there going to be like, how is the process of information, if it's requested, going to be transferred between institutions?
Good question. Go ahead. Go ahead. I don't know that they can hear you from further.
Corinthia.
This is Corinthia. So it specifies that they have to keep those documents on file for 2 years, and I believe it's a little farther down in the rule.
All right, roger that. So there'd be a 2-year expiry, I guess, on this if somebody doesn't get the course finished, where if an institution so desired, they could just get rid of those copies and somebody would have to start the track over.
Tammy, this is Tina.
For
So-
career school, I think they have to be saved for 25 years at the Higher Education Coordinating
Yes.
Commission level. I don't know about supervision, though. That's something we could talk about. Go ahead, Tina.
I would think anybody, any trainer, trainee, if they're doing any type of hours, if an individual leaves that trainer, they should have a documented copy of their training that either vice versa, they can take to the school, or from the school to the trainer, trainee, or from the school directly to us. But I don't think 2 years would be long enough. I don't think that those records could just be gotten rid of by a trainer within 2 years. Or why couldn't they just give a certified copy of what training they did complete for that individual to take with them? And if they
Yeah.
decide to come back at a later date, they can take that certificate of training to another trainer or to a school.
Roger that. Yeah, I'm just hoping that there's some type of transparency, at least, to how those things would be passed along, just in case. Because I looked further down, and I know we'll get there in a second, but the cost of getting into these schools is a lot, you know. And so I'd hope that people, even if they had a chance to, even in the current, you know, political or, you know, world global climate, without comment on that, if something does happen and it causes, you know, an issue where maybe we have to be locked down again or something else would happen, that people have the option to still be able to pick up and continue their education down the road.
This is Audrey Jones, and I have something kind of to piggyback on that, just a question. We might be getting to this later because I know we'll go over online theory and what online programs are accepted from other training programs for this specific training program. But in California, at the California Electrology Academy, if someone goes down there to complete a 400-hour program, I think they give them 2 years to come back and complete the extra 200 hours if they want to finish a 600-hour program, or else it's kind of out of luck. But my question for Sammy is, for online theory programs, as we transition to this new training program in Oregon, you might have people that have already completed 400-hour programs in other states that are wanting to somehow use their online theory or potentially some of their procedure hours to apply towards their education in Oregon. Have we thought about reciprocity for partial programs?
Well, it's not true reciprocity if they didn't obtain a license. Are you talking about people that have obtained a license in
No,
other
I'm talking
states?
about if we approve, like I was reading further down earlier where it said, okay, online theory training programs that would be applicable for us to use in Oregon. If somebody completed that online training program in 2020 or 2021, and now here we just opened up, training in Oregon, and those online theory programs for, the 200 and something hours of online theory, would that person who went through that theory program be able to say, I already completed that last year, can I use that and start my hands-on training in Oregon without having to retake the online theory?
I think that there's two answers to the question. If there's a school, we would have, and Cynthia, correct me if I'm wrong, the school in Oregon review those transcripts and make sure that they are in line with what Oregon requires. And if they're not, have them get up to speed on those, whatever those extra hours are. If it's a training program, or they went from if they went to a school and they're going to a training program, HLO would look at those transcripts and
Okay.
how would that work exactly, Cynthia?
So this is Cynthia. So what we would do is we would take that education or training in another state and we would evaluate that at the time they submit the application, in addition to the current approved training that they would need to complete. So we would marry those in regards to if it's equivalent to what we require, and if it was, then we would proceed with licensure.
So I have a question. So this is a really good question, Audrey, because I don't know that there's an answer to this in the rule and we may need to add it. Would that happen when they apply? So they wouldn't necessarily have their education in California that they received. How would they know, without getting it approved through HLO, know that whatever they did here and then they came to Oregon to marry them? What if it's not enough?
So when
Right, I'm saying, sorry.
And then they went through the training program in Oregon and it's not enough and we had to send them back.
So currently we have a list of educational institutions in other states that we've already evaluated. So if they submitted the application with or contacted us per se and said, hey, I went to Arizona, I did this program, it's only 400 hours. What we would do is we would say Arizona has already been evaluated. They do not have, say, business operations. So we would state, you need to contact a supervisor in Oregon and complete the business operations section of that. And then upon completion, what they would do is they would have that verification from Arizona submitted and that business operations from the supervisor, we would marry them for completion of that, the overall program. Does that make sense?
I'm typing something. Did that make sense?
So Cynthia, that means like when they submit their application, HOL evaluates it, and then HOL will deliver an answer on what remaining aspects of the training program they need to complete, including their hands-on hours / any additional online theory that was not completed in a previous program that they did. Is that right?
Yes, you're correct.
Okay,
So they
cool.
would
Thank you. I
actually
appreciate the clarification.
Get the information from us before they start a training program.
Those I would think yes, well, yes, because for example, those are going to be few and far between because you're either going to go through an educational institution in Oregon, a training program in Oregon, or the few that come from Arizona or wherever, they're gonna reach out to us and say, hey, what do I need to do in Oregon? And so that at that point, then we'll provide that clarification.
Would it be, seems to me it might be, hold on one second, guys. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a smart thing to have a non-credential pathway if we can. So a non-credential pathway, cosmetology has one, is where as part of the pathway, you have to supply, basically what happens is the person who's had education or training in another state provides that information to HLO. HLO then reviews it. And in cosmetology, we move it over to a school to actually review and approve. In this situation, HLO would review and approve, correct?
I agree with you, Sammy. I think that we should look at the rules and clarify that, like the non-credential.
That would make it easier for people, for the public to know what we require, than trying to go, oh, hopefully they call us and make sure that they got their schooling from another state already approved before they start their training. So I think it's legally sufficient. I'm gonna have to reach out to our attorney, who may or may not be on the phone. I do not know, but she's not going to give us an answer off the cuff anyway. I think it's possible to do. We have waivers of education. We also have some authority to determine qualifications, training, education, and fitness of the applicant. So I think it's possible, but I think that might actually clear up your question, Audrey. Did that make sense of how that pathway works?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think y'all might have at the beginning of this program, probably quite a few people asking those questions, because I know a lot of people go down to California who are possibly working in Washington and complete the 400-hour program. And it's going to be kind of a partial, like, okay, some of this applies, some of this doesn't apply. So it'd definitely be good to have an answer on how to handle that situation.
And I 100%, me and Kyle field a lot of questions on what programs are approved in another state, how's this going to work. So we know there are definitely people doing it. So I just made a note to potentially add another pathway to licensure. And then I just need to get the okay from legal counsel, and then that would be added to the proposed rules that we file with Secretary of State.
Awesome.
Okay, all the way back up. I think we are on number 9. The temporary training supervisor ratio is same 4-to-1 at one time. And then the supervisor may have 1 or more supervisors during the electrology training program. So they could have 8 people under them, but at one time they can only be supervising 4. If we wanted to try to, have as broad a rule as possible so that, people can be training different days, but it has to only be 4 at a time, but you could have more under your supervision. Okay, and then if the temporary, this number 11 had a lot of discussion. So if the temporary training has more than one supervisor must be designated as the primary. So there were some committee members that thought it should only be 1 supervisor. And there were other committee members that said, we think it needs to be broader than that. Like they could have, say you have 1 supervisor who can do it on the weekend so you can get your hours faster. And then 1 that does it during the weekday. So if you have more than 1 supervisor, then one of them has to be designated as the primary. So they're basically tracking your documentation, making sure that all your records are kept so that when the training program ends, it's all completed and together, and they would still need to have to fill out the application, each supervisor under the trainee, and get attached to their temporary training license. In that same regard, there'd just be more than 1 of them.
This is Corinthia. Another reason why they wanted to have multiple supervisors is because certain individuals within this industry have expertise in genital hair removal. And if, for example, I have trainer A who does electrolysis on the face or on the arms. I may want to, because this individual is willing to take me on, have this supervisor. However, for specific areas, they may want to do additional training in specific areas on the body. So they would want that second supervisor to step in, even if it wasn't for, maybe a lot of hours or, 50% or whatever percent they choose. They wanted to get that expertise from other individuals within the industry.
Okay. Any comments about that? Questions, comments? Hearing none.
This is Ryan Othis. I'm trying to parse through all that information. I'm guessing, so like the hours that are accumulated by the student or temporary trainee underneath either one of those potential people who's doing the instruction are going to count towards their cumulative hours, but only one person is going to be in charge of record keeping in that sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Only for the trainee. The school has their own training, or their own record keeping mechanism that they have to do in accordance with whatever hex student filing is. So this would just be under the trainee piece.
All right, roger that.
So one supervisor would be filling stuff out, but the main supervisor would just be making sure that they get all that information compiled at the end or maintain it up through the whole program. The number 11, so designated, I think we added, yeah, so that's kind of gives you some examples of what types of information they would be tracking. So tracking forms, certificate of training, examination scores. The temporary training is required to disclose to each customer that they are in training and they do not currently hold a permanent electrology license. And I'm questioning myself on whether that belongs here. So I'm making a note here. I think I might have it in 2 spots. And then number 13 is that documentation that's more specific that Cerinthia has created that gets down to the nuts and bolts of the program. And then number 14 is the theory portion can be taught via distance learning. So online or what online would be what that means. Any questions about this bigger piece of the rule? And Cerinthia has a comment.
Yes, one of the things I wanted to point out is in regards to the online distance theory program. We at the committee level talked about pre-approval of those programs. However, we as an agency are not going to pre-approve those programs. That is up to the supervisor to ensure the content within that program meets the requirements of the training program. And they are responsible for giving any additional training, like I said, for example, business operations or Oregon laws and rules to their trainee. So if I, as a supervisor, have my student go to this training program, they only have 50% of the theory hours, that supervisor is responsible for ensuring that training has all components of that theory training tracker or theory training.
So I have a quick question, Cerinthia. So if I am a training program, I'm moving along, and I decide I want to do an online training program, do I need to resubmit that to you for approval?
No. If the online theory training program is just something that the supervisor and the trainee can choose to do for that theory portion. However, the supervisor has to ensure that.
No, I get that.
Oh, okay.
My question is, if my training program changes from regular theory to online theory, do I resubmit that for HLO pre-approval?
No.
And then one more question. If HLO requires someone to submit their documentation, a trainer, in their training documentation, does it need to say that they're online? And what does that documentation look like?
It's an option, no and no.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Any questions about that?
Yeah, this is Ryan Othis. Is that still going to have that limit of capacity for how many students can operate underneath a person during like the theory if it's gone online? Like if somebody were to just set up an online course and just kind of turn it into a puppy mill in essence, is there going to be a way that you can regulate how many people are actually going through it for the theory, or is it only the practical that has the 4-to-1 ratio?
Only the practical.
Roger that.
Any other questions about the training program and curriculum and procedures, types of procedures, requirements within the rule, content? You may have questions as we get down further, but and I can go back and forth with ease. So I'm just going to keep on going. So 910-0010 is the electrology temporary license limited basis. This one, we're trying to clarify a few things. This is basically somebody who comes in to do a guest spot or to do an event. I don't believe we've ever given one for an electrologist, but we're basically aligning this with body piercing and tattooing. So if this makes sense, this will follow the other rulemakings as we go down the road, same as like defining educational institution and official transcript. So, and Tina hasn't actually read this, but this is actually kind of her section. So she may want to weigh in on some of this. So says that temporary license holder cannot exceed 30 consecutive days, that they may renew up to 2 times in a 12-month period from the date the office receives the application. B is more clarification, must submit all requests to renew a license on a form prescribed by the office. Requests to renew a license must be received at least 20 days before electrology services are provided, unless the requirements of E of this rule are met. So if you go down to E, this one is basically if you're doing your services back to back, like there's no break in service. Like if you're going to stay at this facility for another 30 days, we're not going to make you tell us 20 days before that you're going to renew to stay at the same place that you've been. So no break in service, basically. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to go with yes. Okay, application requirements for a temporary license. The only thing that I added here is unless otherwise approved. And in this situation, this just gives the office some authority if something wacky happens with an application. Some of these, this is more for like tattooing and body piercing than for electrology. It's just we're aligning them all. So I'm just going to keep on going. 910-0025 application requirements for electrology license. So we add. No. Define. We put educational institution here on pathway 1, which is from a school. Add that. E of that rule, we're submit a passing score of the office approved laws and rules exam related to safety and infection control requirements in accordance with the examination rule, which we'll go into detail on an application provided by the office or prescribed by the office. So here, D is office approved practical exam. And so I may need to clarify this, but this D is now being held at the school, not at the school will do the practical exam and let us know. What the office is going to do is create a laws and rules exam regarding safety and infection control. It'd be about 25 questions. It would be on work day and you could do it from home. It'd be free of charge. But it's just to make sure that they know the laws and rules, the safety and infection control stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is Ryan Othis. Is there a temporary license for educators as well? Because I just randomly popped into my head. We were talking about someone having a specialty in something and going over and helping someone else. If there's somebody who's really good that isn't licensed in the state of Oregon that wants to come in and possibly do some instruction, is there a pathway for them to do that?
There is, I believe, at the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, they've got some rules around people coming and doing special training. I think it's under a certain amount of hours. If they're doing, if they're, yes.
So
Tina.
they would fall, if they're outside of a school, they would fall under the temporary,
Right.
getting a
the temporary-
temporary license.
Right, but what he's asking is if the supervisor wants to bring in somebody else to show them something. I don't
Right.
think they need, yeah, so no, I think they can just come in and watch whatever the demonstration is. They're still under the supervision of the supervisor. Does that
But
make
if they're
sense?
gonna come in and train and actually be hands-on with somebody, showing them, they would need a temporary license.
Yes, so if I'm understanding now, if you're meaning if somebody wants to come in from another state and show some electrology stuff to a trainee, yes, they would need to get that guest spot license, and then they could start showing the trainee or anybody how that process would, whatever they're guest spotting about. So if they're from another state, they would get the
Okay,
temporary
cool.
license. If they're from in-state and hold electrology license, they would just come in and provide the service under supervision. Does that make
All right,
sense?
yeah, it does. Thank you.
So this is Cynthia. I want to kind of just talk about this point. So if I was an insurance provider, which is a really big piece of this electrology program, I wouldn't have to get a temporary training license because I'm not actually providing electrology services. I'm just going to be like a guest speaker in a sense to provide
Yeah,
a portion of that training.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
only in the cases where services are provided when they need any kind of electrology license.
All right, roger that. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, and then does anybody have questions about the laws and rules exam? Or, don't want to have it, they've never had them before. So basically what we're doing is practical is going to be at the school, but so we can ensure that safety and infection control is, that they know it, they're going to take a laws and rules test about that as a requirement to licensure. Moving on. So pathway 2 is the temporary license holder. And actually this is kind of backwards and I might need to think about this. The next 2 rules is the trainee under supervision. It really should be above this, but I ran out of numbers. So I'm going to try and fiddle with that. So they would need to get and qualify for the temporary training license, which we'll go over that in a minute. All the same requirements. They take a written exam, which is the NIC exam. They would take a practical exam at their body art facility under a supervisor, and then they would also take the laws and rules exam. So that's easy enough. The next one is the reciprocity. Same scenario. Yes.
Under, this is Cynthia, under E, it answers a question that was previously asked. It says documentation must be submitted within 2 years from the date of application. So he asked if there was a time frame.
That was for the education of
Oh,
the
okay.
exam.
Okay.
But yeah, for exam, it's got to be within 2 years. Reciprocity pathway. So obviously they have to hold a license in something related to electrology. We can get pretty creative in that regard. And then if it's not substantially equivalent, they have to demonstrate that they have been employed somewhere as electrologists. Sometimes they give us tax records. This is a pretty broad rule, so we can fit people in it in different ways. They would, and they would only need to take the laws and rules exam. We were taking out written and practical for people coming from out of state. If they have a license and they qualify based on 4A, great, just take the laws and rules test and away we go. And actually this pay examination fees is not relevant Any questions about, and then here's where I would add a pathway 4 about non-credentialed. People coming from another state who have some education that didn't get a license, and the HLO would review that and then send them, tell them to get a supervisor and all of these things. I'm gonna have to massage that first, find out if it's legally okay, and then massage how that's gonna look. Next one, here's the actual trainee, which should be before the permanent license, but it's not. But I'll figure out how to move that. So this just kind of runs down all the kind of what a trainee is. So their license is valid for 1 year and may be renewed 1 time. They may reapply 1 time. Additional application will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So they didn't want to say you could only have it for, so 1 year. So this is a 3. If you just do it on valid for 1 year, maybe renew 1 time, and then may reapply 1 time, is 3 years. But they didn't want to say after that you can't do anything. So they said on a case-by-case basis, HLO would review it. And you guys can weigh in on that if you want to tweak with that or limit it or however you want to do it. And then number 2 is that they're providing services under supervision. Number 3 is they're documenting, must document and notify the clients that they're providing services and they're not licensed, that they're under supervision. 4 is a question that we got. So they do have to work in an Oregon licensed facility. So there are, I believe, OHSU and Legacy and potentially Providence, I think, are definitely OHSU are looking at doing a training program in their plastic surgery center. And so one of the questions was, does the surgery center have to get a facility license? Yes. The law doesn't. What the law does is it makes room for a practitioner. So a physician is exempt from having to get a body art facility license, but not an electrologist. So if the electrologist is providing the training and the trainer and the training is electrology, and so essentially they're working with a temporary license, they have to work in a licensed body art facility. And unless the law changes, there's no way around. So does that make sense? Because I actually met in a business meeting with Kate Kaufman, I think, about this, and that was one of their questions. And yes, it does have to be a licensed body art facility. Is there any questions about that? And then the last 2 are that we need to be notified if they change status of supervisors. So if they added 1 or they stopped working under 1, and then they have to adhere to all the safety and infection control rules and in all the body art rules. And then the next one is what we require in the application. So meet all the application, like fill out a form that we give you, submit it, show us that you're 18 years of age, show that you have a high school diploma or equivalent, and then pay the licensing fee. So pretty straightforward. The next one, any questions about that rule? Moving on. So this is the electrology supervisor. So this is all the things that they have to do. We'll just kind of go through, and some of them are going to be redundant from what was under the training program, but it's just to kind of ensure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. So why procedures are being performed by temporary trainee, the ratio is 1 supervisor to 4, so just reiterating that. And that they may have 4 they can approved may have more than 4 trainees under their guidance and supervision. So again, it could be 8. They just have to be supervising when practicing only 4. So reiterating that, the approved supervisor who's been designated as the primary, reiterating that again. Talking about direct supervision and indirect supervision, it's just redundant. If there's, is this twice? Yes, it is. So I have this one twice. Apparently one's much more thorough than the other. Seven is that the supervisor must exercise management guidance and control. That they must document all the work done by the trainee on a form prescribed by the office, which is the training program forms, which you guys got in an email. Make sure that clients know that the temporary training is not licensed under supervision, that the supervisor has to notify us. This is done. Temp license is 10 days. I'm gonna make this 10 days. And then the supervisor can't have any disciplinary action, which is a requirement of the next one. So you must apply, submit that you have a license, which we would just look you up. You have 2 years of experience and no disciplinary, no current or pending disciplinary action. Any questions about those two? Hearing none, moving right along. So the examination rule, we've kept in here the written exam is office approved, written examination for electrology, which is the NIC exam. We make it broad so that we could approve other ones if necessary. So if they came from another state and they took a different test, we could review that and approve it. The practical exam, office recognizes and approves. So when we adopt a specific version of the scoring criteria and objectives, so that the supervisor in training know exactly what they have to do for a practical exam. 3 is it adds the Oregon laws and rules exam here. And then these numbers are referenced in other rules, which I have already showed you. This is where the practical exam under 2 must be administered by the school or by a supervisor. So it references that. I think I made a note to make sure that this is that these are linked together under application requirements and here. And the office may review an approved exam, including written objectives and practical exam assessments upon request. And then pursuant to an ORS, HLO may waive an exam of this rule if the examination is substantially equivalent to determine qualification, fitness, and ability to practice. So there is actually a statute, a law that allows office to waive examinations. So doesn't mean we will, doesn't mean we'll even have a request, but we can do that review, and if it's substantially equivalent, we can waive it. So there is that. And it's just more, it just removes more barriers and allows us to look at things more broadly and say, okay, how can we make this fit? How can we make sure that the public's safe, but still, or make sure that people are trained in the public safe, but still try to get these other types of training allowed so that we can get more people licensed, which is at the end of the day what we're trying to do. Most of the next pieces are very general kind of administrative functions. So on 35, I just added a few things. The exam is administered in English only. Remove that. You can actually have an interpreter. So in the case of the NIC exam, I don't know, could they request an interpreter, Tina, for the NIC exam?
That I don't know. I'm not sure, since it's a national exam, if they can. I don't know. That'd be something we need to check into.
Tina, I have a question. Do they take the NIC examination independently? We don't administer that or order that anymore, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, we still do that? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's been years because we haven't had anybody. When they take it in other states, they're usually taking the NIC, but we haven't administered it here for quite a while.
Okay, so we will look into that. And the rest is just renumbering and some stuff like that. Taking out the written retake requirements because that's all done through NIC. We don't control that. If they need to retake it, we reorder it and they retake it. Which I don't think they ever fail it, but not that I am aware of. Like Tina said, we haven't had anyone even take it, so we don't even have data on that for the recent but probably 2 or 3 biennium. Practical retake is a student or temporary training may retake practical exam through, it's just stating the obvious that you can retake it whenever at the school or under a supervisor. This doesn't even really have to be here. It could be deleted, but I think we decided that just to reiterate it a little bit more that you can retake it, and that the way it just eliminates the question if it comes up. It doesn't hurt to be here, and this doesn't hurt, so. Electrology renewal. The electrologist wanted anybody renewing. So on the application, we'll have a new question that says, or attest to having read the safety and infection control laws and rules at the time of renewal. So you just attest to that sign, just like you do attest to continuing education. So that piece they added in for people renewing. Continuing education, when I held a meeting back in March of 2021, the Rules Advisory Committee wanted to post to the board about all of their hours, 8 hours being online. So that's something that the board could decide, or currently it's 4 hours must be obtained through a participation, which was student, teacher, training, trainer. And then the other 4 can be self-study hours. Would you want to keep it that way? Change all 8 to online? It's really up to you guys how you want to do it. I kept it the way it is. And it never actually really came up at the more recent Rules Advisory Committee. And I think it was actually more kind of related to COVID and kind of just piggybacking on what if that ever happens again, what would we do? What HLO did is they said any continuing education that was required to be participation and attendance, is we waived that during the state of emergency. So that's kind of covered already and on how procedurally we would do that. So it's really up to the board if they want to recommend changing that to all 8 hours being online or leaving it.
This is Audrey, and my own personal opinion, I think having the option to do all online could be beneficial, especially to people who are in more rural parts of the state, and the lack of potentially online training that is participation and attendance in the electrology world is also kind of a problem. I think either way would be fine, but if we had the option for people to be able to do all self-learning, as long as they can document what they're doing, I don't think it should be a problem.
This is Ryan Othis. I agree with that. And the tattooing side, trying to find approved courses in Oregon is difficult, if not impossible at times. And having the option to at least take the effort to still study, even if something isn't there, so you're not going to possibly lose your license is a good option in my mind. So if I would agree to go all theory or online or something like that. That way there isn't a physical presence necessary for continuing education.
Okay, and we have other programs that do it this way. Advanced Aesthetics does all their self-study, so it's not unheard of. So I will go, it's a proposal. We could get a lot of feedback that they hate it and we'll change it back. Or do 2 hours, 6 hours. We'll just throw it out there and then we'll see what happens. I'm all about doing that. And if no one likes it, we'll pull it back and leave it how it was. The next one is adding under 910-0065 to little c, implantable active neuromodulators. So just adding the word active, and I don't remember why. I'm assuming because you could have an inactive one and
Effects.
yeah, so you just have to give written authorization if the person has a pacemaker, implantable active neuromodulators, or other implantable electronic device. So you just got to get that okay through a physician. So that was added in 2021. 91070, the again in 2021, wanted to remove the licensee being prohibited from wearing jewelry under their gloves. So they want to be able to allowed to wear their jewelry, and they wanted to propose removing that rule. So that is, I'm done with that piece. Is there any comments about those generally?
This is Matthew Holmes. Is there are any of the other groups under this board allowed to wear jewelry under their gloves, like tattooers and piercers?
No.
Yeah, as I understand it, that severely inhibits the ability to appropriately wash your hands and compromises the safety and structural integrity of the gloves. So just something for everybody to ponder on. I don't want to talk a whole lot because my mouth hurts, but I wanted to put that out there.
This is right. No, I totally agree. I don't understand why you couldn't take off your jewelry just for like simple like hygiene and safety practices. That seems kind of weird to me personally. I don't know why that. Is there any reason why they requested that so fervently?
They've wanted it that way
This is-
since. Oh, go ahead, Audrey, please. You will know more than I.
Yeah, this is Audrey. I vaguely remember this discussion coming up at the RAC before I was a board member. And I believe it was brought up because there was significant reports that it actually doesn't impact the hygiene level of your hands, like for simple jewelry, I think is what the rule or the reports had found. And I mean, I can understand both ways, but I do remember there was a lot of discussion on it, and a lot of people on that rack had come to the agreement that, like, in what we do or the type of jewelry that they're talking about wearing, like a wedding band or whatnot, it wouldn't impact the hygiene level. So
This is Matthew Holmes. My only concern, I'm going to start with I get where you're coming from, but then we'd have to start typing in rule subjects for like what type of jewelry is classified as simple, so it would make it kind of a subjective rule instead of an objective rule, and we kind of need like full-on blanket statements. So like under that rule, I
Right.
could wear the giant spikiest most crevicey type of rings and it would still be technically fine. Just my concern, just the extreme of it.
Well,
right,
we
I
can-
wonder.
Sorry, Audrey, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I'm maybe I'll try to do a little Google search and see if I can find those supporting documents, because I like vaguely remember this conversation, and I remember thinking the same things y'all were thinking, and then whatever we talked about like changed my mind. So I wonder, I'm trying to remember what supporting documents people had brought up being like, this is why we should be able to wear jewelry. I don't know.
I can do the same thing when I leave this area and somebody else comes on. I can research it and then come back and give you whatever information. Again, we can take it out and then we can look at more information, and then when we do permanent rules, we can add it back in. So just a proposal. But I think let's look at.
You know what, I
studies.
think I just remembered part of it. I think it's that they in nursing, there was some sort of rule change in nursing where in nursing they're allowed to wear jewelry underneath their gloves.
Oh, interesting.
And so someone had brought that up, that if nurses and medical staff can wear jewelry, why shouldn't electrologists be able to wear jewelry?
It's a pretty reasonable point.
Yeah.
I will look that up when someone else
this
is on.
This is Rhino. I work in tattooing, and I know a lot of dudes who wear 16, rings on their fingers and a watch and a wristband and stuff. So I like the idea of it being objective. And also in response to the nursing situation with this, I guess it'd probably depend on what department that they're working in, that would be reasonable, right? In a surgical field, if you have a surgical
Agreed.
nurse or something, then it probably wouldn't be welcome, right? So that, and I mean, also if you're working with electricity and you have a bunch of metal on you, it just, I don't know how the grounding stuff works.
That's not a concern with electrology at all, honestly.
Yeah, I
Not a
don't know how any of
concern.
that stuff works, but I'm just like, I'm afraid of a lot of stuff anyways, so I'd be like concerned, And I don't know. It just seems like it'd take 2 seconds, It doesn't seem like it'd be a an undue hardship for somebody to remove a piece of jewelry, or, you know, in the case of some tattooers, I've seen 16 pieces of jewelry before they get into doing their work.
Okay, so I will do a little research when I'm done here, when I'm off screen. So does anyone have any other questions about this document? And I'll do those few, look up the non-credentialing and see if we can write a rule for that. I'll work on the glove piece. Let me go back to all my notes. Me and Tina will look into the interpreter assist exam for the national exam. We'll make sure and do any administrative alignment, like remove one of these primaries, supervisors, add the ORS there. So just some administrative things. And when you go to approve them, you can just say, approve the proposed rules with changes, and then so move and a second. The last piece, if there's no questions or comments, I'd like to, so as one of the things the RAC's required to do if we hold a RAC is they need to look at the fiscal impact on small business, state agencies, the public, and then communities and persons likely to be affected by the rule. So we basically pose a lot of questions to, I give them a list, and I usually fill in a lot of the list. And then we just kind of go over what I fill in. Where's my document? Thanks. Find it. Oh, so I'm just gonna go over kind of some of those questions, and if you guys have additional things that I've missed, by all means, bring it up. So I'm just gonna start from the top, and it's, hold on, let me bring up that document. Give me 1 second. Can you see that?
Yes,
Ms.
Sammy.
Audrey, and yes.
I don't know why some of these make me view on 2 pages. It's annoying. Oh, here we go. Okay. So the first question is, are state agencies likely to be economically affected by the rule change? If yes, which ones? So I just go through, a lot of this is hypothetical, it's guesses, it's, you know, you don't really know, you don't usually have amounts, so you're just giving as much information as you can so that people that may be affected can at least see it and consider what that may look like for them, and they can make comments on that. So I state that OHSU is a state agency, they're a public university, and that they are planning on having a training program, so that would affect them. There may be a cost keeping records, paying the training program. They will be required to have a body art facility license, so there's a cost there, which is $250 to get it, and then $125 to keep it up. Another state agency is Department of Corrections. We recently, yes, thank you, Bob. We issued a license for, and this isn't really, they have been required to do this all along. It's not really a change, and usually write fiscals based on a change, but I thought it was important enough to add in here that one of the prisons recently got a body art facility license to perform electrology in those prisons, and it's primarily for adults in custody who are wanting gender reassignment surgery. So it's just kind of giving that synopsis in that regard, and that there may be cost to it, follow-up appointments to physicians, and a kind of circle back into the Oregon Health Plan, because those people who are in custody are under the Oregon Health Plan, so there may be a cost for the permanent hair removal services to Oregon Health Plan, which is a state agency under OHA. And I apparently this is redundant, so this should be Department of Corrections. So there's some massaging needs to be done here. All this stuff gets picked up and put into a database with Secretary of State's office. So this can be changed and added. It's not a final document. Then this one is if more electrologists become licensed, the number of persons increase. If there's a increase in electrologists, and maybe increased cost to Oregon Health Plan. If more payments of permanent hair removal service are required, but those are payments approved. So you get the gist. There may be other things that need to be looked at. So there may be a cost to Oregon Health Plan. And then HLO will be required to review and create templates of the training program, take on the applications for supervisors. So there'll be some impact on HLO. The next question is units of local government. So we just picked up if the Department of Corrections is doing it, maybe local county jails are doing it. So we just put the possibility there. Under number 3 are members of the public likely to be economically affected by the change. If the rule changes lead to increase in electrologists, persons seeking electrology service will be affected. So more electrologists, more people getting services. I put that private insurance companies may be affected because more people are getting services, they have to pay out more. Again, this is all a guessing game. That's, you know, we really have no idea. We're just trying to get everything down that we can. Provide estimate of the economic impact on state agencies. So I just gave some pricing and amounts, but I could find an annual salary. And Audrey, if you want to weigh in here, it's a big gap. 25,000, 50,000, maybe it's more. I don't know. I just say
I would say that's probably somebody working part-time, but yeah, it probably varies based on the hours they're working.
Do you think, so you think that 25 to 50 is part-time?
For me, that would be part-time, yes.
And then would 75 to 100 be full-time-ish?
Potentially, yeah.
Again, it's all hypothetical, so better to say it than not say it. Okay. And I say that it's widely different depending on city and lots of other factors. Local and state jails are required to hire electrologists to provide services to clients or administer a training program. They may pay at least, again, this is just a fee, what the annual cost of now I know a part-time versus full-time electrologist would be, and that's if they wanted to do it. And then persons of the public seeking education or training may see tuition and training costs up to $10,000. And I just looked at what I got information from Mary Nielsen, who may be opening up a electrology training program. I looked up some California schools and what they charge. I reached out to the previous Oregon school, but I didn't hear back. However, she may have emailed me over the weekend. So I put 10,000, assuming that's pretty close. And that kind of aligns with tattooing and aligns with aesthetics. So I looked at what was similar. And then the training program is, I don't really know if a person would pay to be under supervision. I have no idea how that really works. And I put in comparison to enrollment in a Task 2 school in Oregon, cost between what I found, $8,500 and $12,000, in an advanced aesthetics school, approximately $20,000. So I just gave what I could find, and any comments would be helpful. I don't really know. Do you foresee in a body piercing training program, does somebody pay to be under supervision? Do you pay them to provide services to the public? How does that do? Does anyone know how that works?
This is Ryan Othis. For tattooing, the costs seem to be about 10 to 15% lower than what I've heard or experienced in talking to people over the past 3 to 4 months. And yeah, on average, people would pay to get into a school for that person to be the eyes and ears and recording person for their training. So, as some places I've heard that they are able to be paid after the training is done if they decide to get picked up. But most places I'd heard when they're doing the procedures are not. You don't get paid for going to school.
Yeah, so in a school setting, no, they definitely pay. What I'm unsure about is if it's a training program done at a body art facility under supervision. I don't know, in the piercing program, do they pay the trainee? Does a trainee pay the supervisor? I have no idea how that works. And so my plan is to reach out, if I can't get the information from the board, to a couple training programs and see how they do it. And then I'll write it into this summary.
Yeah, that's probably the best. I don't think that there is any congruency across the board with people who are going to be in an air quote like apprenticeship program as to what they're going to be getting paid or what they have to pay when they're actually doing the procedures under supervision.
Sam, this is Matthew Holmes. I've done a couple of trainings under the current rule set. If you wanted to reach out to me after the meeting in the next, whenever it's easiest for you, I'm fairly available, but I'd love to chat.
No. Okay, yes, I will be reaching out, Matthew.
Love it.
Okay, and then I did find an Oregon Health Plan fee for service fee schedule that said, and I didn't really know how to read it, but there's 3 fees. One was 65, the other was like 67, and the other one was $212.99. So I just put all the range, and then it'll be attached in the. Why isn't it's showing up? Anyway, it's an attachment, so it'll be in the fiscal impact. The attachment will. The next one is effect on small business. So assuming, there's 82 licensed electrologists in Oregon, and potentially they could, most of them are usually small business owners. I think usually it's one electrologist in their own practice. Currently there's no schools, so any one of those 82 people, if they meet the requirements, could become a licensed training program. So just all this really requires is an estimated number. So my estimate is 82. Identify the types of businesses and industries subject to the rule. So there's the Plastic Surgery Center through HSU, permanent hair removal, education, electrology, and health insurance. Couldn't think of any other businesses or industries. So, and if you guys think of things after this, you can email me and say, hey, add this. I'll be filing this in the next week with Secretary of State's office. So as long as it's, 7 days before the end of the month, whatever day that is, I don't know, I have to look. I can add stuff to this very simply. Description of recording and record keeping, training and tracking the trainee, cost for educational materials, books, equipment, that kind of stuff. Estimated cost of professional services. This kind of goes back to a guest person coming in and doing some specialized electrology, maybe genital area, whatever. Maybe there'll be a cost for that, subject matter experts. Equipment supplies and increased administration. Would likely be equipment costs for persons obtaining education. This may include hair removal devices. So a person getting into the business under education and training, I'm assuming they'll have to buy the devices. So put that there. Several small business owners were on my rack, so I answered that. This little portion under 6, I already did up above. I just forgot to delete it. Sorry, it's an error. Anywhere where there's lines, I didn't have an answer. So if you guys can fill them in, great. If not, then I would usually put, so this fiscal impact, is the fiscal impact sufficient to notify those who might be economically affected to evaluate their position? I think so. I mean, I'm going to go with a yes, that it is sufficient to notify. I think we've got everybody in there. Everybody will be notified. So my feeling is yes, unless you guys think that there's more information that needs to be provided. Have I missed somebody? Or an organization or whatever. And then number 8, little a, is consolidating compliance and reporting requirements. I mean, it's consolidated as it can be under HLO. I mean, it's same application process, exam process, regulation process. I can't foresee how you would consolidate it any more than how HLO has. Objective criteria for standards. HLO is in line with standards for both education and training programs, so they're the same, administered the same. There's just other steps in the training program since under HLO. Exempting small business from part of the rule. So I just put that the law won't allow HLO to waive the facility license requirement for training programs. Just letting them know. Other less intrusive or less costly alternatives. Don't know any unless you do a law change. Identify this next piece, number 9, is new. So House Bill 2993, which requires the agency or HLO, Oregon Health Authority, to get feedback on communities and persons likely to be affected by the rule, which we did. So you guys gave us feedback on who that was, and we proceeded to get people on the rack. And then the other piece is in the actual filing document. We have to identify persons and racial groups that are impacted by the rule. Impacted by the rule. So who is subject to this rule? Everybody is. So persons subject to the rule, individuals seeking to obtain electrology licensure in Oregon, all persons, no matter their race, gender, ethnic background, will be required to meet the same standards. So it is what it is, what it is. You have to apply and meet all the same requirements. It doesn't matter what any of that. What issues does the rule address? Updating and streamlining the current educational curriculum for electrologist licensure and creating a training program. Who will be affected? Electrologists, persons seeking generating assignment surgery, and persons wanting to become licensed in electrology. And then, which racial groups will be affected by the rule? Again, all racial groups will be affected. Everyone's going to have to follow the same stuff. The next one, which racial groups are likely to be most concerned by issues addressed in the rule? I have no idea. I don't have any idea. I don't think any, but I'm thinking in my mind that they'll be happy because we've created a pathway to licensure other than a school. I mean, we're removing barriers. We're giving a gift, basically. So I'm going to go with that. Which racial groups are likely to be most affected by the issue? Oh, that's redundant. Sorry. Do any stakeholders present represent the racial groups likely to be affected by the rule? Identify what persons and racial groups are impacted by the rule. So yeah, our stakeholders do represent all different people. So yeah, I think we've covered that. Identify other resources that HLO can find data to help determine the racial equity impacts. So we've just worked with several organizations. We worked with OHSU, Department of Corrections, Basic Rights Oregon, OLE, Brave Space LLC. So we've tried to incorporate everybody's opinion and feedback in this process. So, and then because of that, I don't really need to solicit from board members any more information unless you have it. If I've missed a group, or I should reach out to somebody else for more information. I'm gonna talk through some of that with Matthew, and then on that non-credentialing, get some feedback from our attorney, and then Audrey and I are going to look at what we're going to look at. I can't remember.
The study done for the gloves.
Yes, any studies regarding gloving. So does anyone have any questions about this very long document? Or feedback?
This is Lisa Chambliss. I've been doing a little Googling of the glove thing, and at CDC, it says rings, long fingernails, fingernail jewelry can make it more difficult to put on the glove.
Lisa, you cut out.
Are you able to hear me?
Now we can.
Yay. Okay. Yeah, CDC it implies that rings shouldn't be worn. So I'm inclined to agree with taking rings off before gloving.
Okay, other board members?
This is Matthew Holmes. I do tend to follow most of the CDC guidelines. They've got much better scientists than I do.
So just a quick straw poll for my proposed rules, change it back to requiring removal of rings. And I'll just go down the list. Lisa, are you a yes on that?
Yeah.
Matthew,
I agree.
Audrey,
I'll agree.
Ryan?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so I will change that on the proposed rules. If you guys don't have any other comments or questions, I will make a statement and you guys can say so moved. So basically the board is approving the proposed rules with the changes we discussed for filing with the Secretary of State's office in the October Oregon Bulletin. Comments will be received from October 1st to October 28th. There'll be a hearing on October 19th. The board will meet again on November 7th to adopt permanent rules, and then they should be effective and filed by January 1st, 2023. Somebody can so move that and second it if you don't want to.
It's Matthew Holmes, so moved.
This is Audrey
I don't
Jones,
know
a
if you-
second.
I don't know if you can do that, Matthew.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
you
right.
can.
No, I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm sorry.
This is Lisa Chambliss. I so move.
This is Audrey Jones, I second.
Okay. You want to do a roll call, Matthew?
I sure do. Let me get that screen pulled up. Oh gosh, where did it go? Da-da-da. A motion has been made. I'll call roll. Matthew Holmes, aye. Lisa Chambliss,
Hi.
Audrey Jones,
Aye.
Ryan Othis,
Aye.
and a motion has been passed.
Hey, great, guys. Thank you for your feedback, and this has been fun. So we'll just keep trucking along and get this going. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for leading us through that, Sammy.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks for all
Thank
your
you,
hard work.
Cynthia, and Audrey Audrey did a lot of work with Cynthia on that qualification stuff as a subject matter expert. So thank you, Cynthia, for that, and Audrey.
Thank you. And I think I'm up
Thanks,
next.
Corinthia.
Yes.
Can you still hear her? She's got some reporting to do. Can everybody hear Cynthia?
This is Matthew
Cynthia.
Holmes. I can.
Good. So really in regards to the qualification committee, Sammy went over everything in regards to what the content was. So I don't have anything else to add unless anyone wants to ask questions about the specific content within the curriculum and the training program. Very much.
No questions here. This is Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And thank you, Sam, for doing the report.
Yes.
No problem.
So next on the agenda is the reports. And this is Bob Bothwell for the record. I know my screen says Sammy Patnode, but I assure you I'm not Sammy, at least not today.
That's cute as well.
Yeah, yes, for sure. So, director's report. So if you have heard or you haven't heard, I am the new interim director. Well, interim director, not new. I'm the interim director. Sylvie had moved on to Arizona for brighter things. And in my place in regulatory is Trampus Shuck. Trampus, can you open your screen real quick so everybody can see who you are? Please.
Hello,
Yeah.
everyone.
And that's Trampus.
Oh, this is Matthew Holmes. We're still on the screen with the questions and answers and stuff.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay. And we're currently working on a new program for here at HLO. It's a little bit out of our wheelhouse, but it's it came on because of the COVID and is a temporary staffing agency. So in short, if within parameters, if a temporary staffing agency is has people that they are staffing hospitals with, they are going to be required to have a registration here at HLO. And on top of that, this temporary staffing agency will also work with stakeholders. There's a specific group out there, and will have to do what they're calling rate capping. Next on my list is board recruitment. Currently, so we have Matthew, who's with us till 2025. Ryan also, and he's able to reappoint. Matthew is not. Audrey is with us until 2025, and she can also reappoint. Lisa, good with us until 2024, and she can reappoint. Christina Shull, who's not here, is a new board member. And we still have two vacant positions, a public member and a body piercer. So if board members or anybody listening knows of anybody who might be interested, they can contact us here at HLO and we'll walk them through the process. As far as the COVID-19 update goes, HLO is open. People are coming into the office, testing, and walk up to the windows to renew licenses or purchase facility licenses and the like. Any questions on that?
This is Ryan Othis. None for me. Thanks for the update.
Okay. I don't have it up on the screen, and I don't know if Sammy does or not. Let me see real quick. The board materials.
Hit save. And then move that over here. And then it goes to it's full screen. Right down, down, right there.
I got you.
Yeah, see that?
No, I turned it off.
Oh.
So, the spot, do the board members want me to share the screen? So we can go through the, rest of my report, or if you have it open, or do you have it in front of you and it's not necessary?
This is Matthew Holmes. I have it in front of me.
Everybody good, just having me go through it and read it?
Sounds good.
Yep.
All right. So, here on your slides, it is slide 48. License issued to tattoo artists. Q4 of 22, we saw, looks like an uptick. But other than that, everything seems to be pretty static in the 60 range. Specialty level licenses, there's not a whole lot of them. It just like there's a giant jump, but it's only by 5 between Q2 and what happened in Q3 and Q4. Earlobe piercing technicians, pretty static, 11 to 16 or 14, depending on what quarter it is. Electrologists, again, in Q2 of 21, it looks like a big spike, but it's 3 or 4. Renewal for tattoo artists, it looks like most everybody's gone to online. And we still have a few that stick with the paper, but that's continuing to improve. Same with the standard body piercing and specialty. Earlobe piercing technicians, renewals. They're moving towards online as well. And electrologists, same, which is good for everybody. Licensing trends for body art facilities. They've grown in Q1 of 23. Looks like it's been a steady growth since Q1 of 21. Earlobe piercing technicians, slight decline. Electrologists, they increased and then they leveled out about 80 between Q4 of 22 and Q1 of 23. Especially level 1 and 2s had an uptick and have remained pretty consistent in the last 2 quarters, Q4 and Q1 of 23. Body piercing technicians, temporary body piercing technicians. We're up at 100 right now. Looks like a continuous uptick. Licensing trends for tattoo artists. It's a continuing incline, people getting licensed. Standard body piercing, slight uptick, but it's going in the right direction as the others. Licensed by age and gender. It's about almost break even. Male and female, and we have others. Again, as we've said before, don't have to pick a gender when you're applying. And written exams. So everybody had an opportunity to look at this. Our testing information.
This is where I know this. I have seen it and studied it.
Any
Matthew
questions?
Holmes, same.
No questions for me.
Same.
Okay. And here's your financials. You have quite a bit of money, but ending balance and ending balance, or beginning and ending balance, is pretty darn close. And Sylvie over the years has gone over the expenditures, and those continue to change And I noticed on the end here that the numbers are 103%, 124%, 104, and 113% as you go down the list. Those are probably and likely wrong, but I didn't get an answer. So if I was to guess, it would be like 3%, 24%, 4%, and 13%. So, but no, you're on this board is on the right track, and I've been here about 10 years, and I don't think I've ever seen the numbers that close without going in the negative. Body piercing exam dates. They need to vote on these? Oh, okay. So we are letting you know the body piercing exam dates, February 6th of 23, May 8th of 23, and September 4. That concludes the director's report. I went through it pretty quick. I'm new, don't know how to drag it on any longer, but I'll figure that out as time goes on. And if anybody doesn't have any questions for me that I can answer or try to answer or get an answer for you, I'll turn it over to Trampus for the regulatory report.
All right. Hello, everyone. So this is Trampus Shuck. I'm the interim regulatory manager. And I'm just going to kind of go over the numbers here with you. The report, you know, is laid out and pretty detailed, but you know, it looks like we have 3 bienniums on the report. However, that 2019 biennium, we only have 1 case that is still open, and that is a case that we will hopefully get resolved today. So we'll just have the 2021 and the 2023 bienniums. As you can see in that we've closed a good portion of the 21 cases, and the 23 cases we've closed some. So we're just kind of moving through them other than that and getting them closed. You had quite a, looks like you had kind of a little bit of a bump in the 2021 biennium, but not huge. So like I said, we're just working through them, and if you had any questions about any of these things or any of these numbers, I can try to answer them for you.
This is Ryan Othis. I have no questions. I love this this slide. It always is very tidy. So thank you for doing that up.
Well, I wish I could take credit for it.
All right, thank you, Trampus.
All right.
Then we have next on the list is the policy report. Sammy, want to step in? Thank you.
I'm back. So, so we kind of talked about briefly that the electrologists are going away from having an HLO administered exam. Well, we've gone away from that completely already, and it would be administered at the school or the training level. That is what we are proposing as a proposal and a conversation with the body piercing practical examination. So in 2011, we got the body piercing licensing program, and the Advisory Council on Electrology and Tattoo got merged to create the body art licensing program, the Board of Body Art Practitioners. Yes, that's it. That was in 2011. As part of that, HLO and subject matter experts created the body piercing training program, which is in the rules now, which has been laid out. I think it's 1,100 hours. I'm not positive on that. And as part of that, created a practical examination. The exam we hold at least twice a year, 3 times a year, which Bob just told you what dates are. The dates are, it requires HLO staff, also requires 2 proctors. We have to pay for a facility for it to be done at. It's costly. When we first started, because everybody had to take the practical exam, we were having like 8 to 12 candidates per exam date. Now we're down to like 1 to 4. Usually right there in the middle. So it's not actually paying for the cost. Applicants aren't actually paying for the cost of the service, and we're a fee for service based agency. So you get a service, you got to pay that fee, so just like a license, right? This many licensees If there's more, you're going to pay less. So if there's less examinees, they need to be paying more. And so kind of what we're proposing is getting rid of that, having the body piercing exam be given at the supervisor level or school if it ever happens. The same scenario would happen is they would get the scoring criteria information and then the learning objectives, which kind of lays out how the practical exam is done. The supervisor would do it. And then, you would actually have a tracking mechanism and a scoring criteria on how that trainee did on the exam. And that would be added to the official transcript or the completion training program form. And then, so that's the way we want to go. And then we would also beef up the written examination with more, what's Cynthia call it? More questions about pre-service counseling, anatomy assessment, lifestyle issues, jewelry consultation. So more written questions about what is required, what we currently require in the practical exam. Procedures, cleaning, gloving, all that kind of stuff. So your law is vague. It says that the HLO approves an examination. It could be written, it could be verbal, it could be practical. So going to just a written exam and then the practical exam done at the supervisor level and just being on their completion forms as part of their application requirement. So that's kind of the way HLO is moving, and we're moving this way for all of our programs, not just body piercing or not just electrology. Another thing to note is we have virtually 0 complaints for body piercing, and that's been since its inception in 2012. Another thing to kind of note is that tattooing schools or applicants don't have a practical exam. So it's definitely been done before. It's definitely something that other professions do, including professions within your board scope. So, I mean, I think what Bob wants to know is kind of your feedback, what you think about it. Are you totally against it? Do you think that there's a middle ground? And then obviously this would take a rule change and we would have a rules advisory committee, and kind of that same process we just did for electrology would happen for body piercing. And I'm assuming since it has to be done, we'd probably wrap up maybe the whole rulemaking in that one kind of time frame. And I think rules could probably, don't quote me on this, April-ish. If we want to do a thorough rulemaking, June, but we could do a separate rule, just the practical exam. Lots of options and possibilities. So please provide us feedback. We want to know what you think. Just off the cuff, what you're thinking. You hate it, like it, something in the middle.
This is Matthew Holmes. I'm assuming you all knew that I would jump in on this one. I have extreme reservations about getting rid of the practical. Can I speak on my general experience of being a proctor for more than a decade?
Yeah.
So my biggest observance in being a proctor was horrible glove usage and cross-contamination issue. And a lot of the feedback that I got in talking to people that were taking the practical exam is that that's how they were taught. So if you've got instructors that are teaching their students improper gloving techniques, and then you have that instructor grade their test, I guarantee you they're going to pass, and it's not going to matter what they do with their gloves. That's about as much as I can talk. I'm sorry, guys.
You're fine, Matthew. This is Bob. I'm not on screen because Sammy and I are sharing.
Go ahead.
Like Sammy said, one of the things that we took into consideration. Sorry about that. I was having computer problems today already, so it's Monday. But anyway, back to the topic. The thing that most captures our attention is it takes time from staff, for us to have staff out of the office to do the practical. It takes other professionals in your profession who have to take time out of their day to come do it, and it's sure they're compensated for it and the rental of the facility to do it. But with all that being said, we don't have any complaints with regards to infections. So something's being taught right at school, and people are taking it on their own initiative to do it correctly. You know, I'll share an experience with you, not it's a piercing or tattoo experience, but I went to my dentist recently, and he moved all around the room, touched things, and never changed his gloves. And in the same with the doctor's office. They come in, they put gloves on, they move around the room, they grab lids off things to grab things out of it, and do what they have to do in the exam, and they never change the gloves. I get where we're purposely piercing and making a hole and creating an environment where infection could occur, but statistically speaking, and that's what I have to go by, we don't see it. We are just not seeing it. So I think something is going right at the education level.
Or at the practical exam level.
At the professional level. But the practical exam doesn't teach, well, I'll take that back. It may teach them at that moment when they cross-contaminate, and then they're done. They fail. So, you know, I'm looking at one of the other things that we're charged with doing here is reducing barriers for people to obtain their license. So I totally 100% understand why the practical is there, but I don't necessarily see that it's doing what Matthew, what you're saying it could be doing, because we are not having that problem. We don't have infection control problems in tattoo either. And Sammy wants to say something.
So I think to Matthew's point, I think it's valid. And I think Bob's is valid as well. I think there's things that we can do. I mean, we know who the supervisors are. We could provide them training on the forms that they're gonna have the scoring criteria, the same forms that you have, Matthew, when you score a practical exam. So they're gonna know exactly what needs to be done. There should be no reason that they don't know what's gonna be right there in black and white. And there's no reason HLO can't hold just a virtual training on how those forms work. What's the expectation? There's all different ways we can do things now with having this online presence and stuff. So I think what you're saying is valid, but I think there's some tools that we can use to make sure those supervisors are doing their job, are getting it right the first time, and are testing to make sure that student or trainee knows. That's all I have.
This is Cerinthia, Bob. I'd also like to weigh in on this in regards to what Sammy said. These tools, one of the things is I will put together is a document, but clarifying the areas of the individuals who have had those auto fails, where they're auto failing, and really beef up that education to the current supervisors as well, because of when they come. But it is a snippet in time. People are nervous, they forget things, they're having people monitoring them, and so beefing up that education I think is a great thing to support this. And in addition, taking some of the elements from the practical exam that can go into the written exam, and just doing that extra educational piece as well.
And I think this is food for thought. I think that at the next meeting in November, we would bring this to you in the form of a schedule and ask you who you would recommend on the RAC, Rules Advisory Committee, and then we would go from there. So I think this is just a start of the discussion, and so you don't have to weigh in now. It's a process that you will be well vetted. And like I said, we have lots of tools now to make sure, probably tools that would be more useful for supervisors and trainees than what we have now. Then the practical, what we would replace it with is probably more helpful than the practical, because we really could say, hello, supervisor, trainer, this is what you need to do. And this is what you're grading on. And this is what your person needs to know. So I think if we frame it right, it's definitely an opportunity to make sure that that's happening correctly and there's not cross-contamination and gloving mistakes in that, so.
This is Ryan Othis. I think I would naturally agree with you in a sterile environment where everything could be held constant, almost like an economic analysis. But in the real world, I don't know if I would wholly agree with that. In fact, I would go so far as to say, like, if the practical exams were being done, why couldn't you throw tattooing in there as well? Why don't we start having practicals with them? That'd help cover the costs.
This is Matthew Holmes. I've wanted that for years.
Thank you, Matthew.
It's not something we've thought about needing, so we haven't done it.
So one of the things is, Bob, if I could weigh in on that, when you have a licensed career school, you have an instructional design set up. You go through all of these different aspects to ensure that you are educating these individuals. The practical examination basically is a final piece to put in for the completion of that education. So basically with a training program, in a sense, it's the same. You're going through that process. We're putting the parameters in place to ensure that what you've done, you're now with standard criteria and assessments, ensuring the individual that you just trained is completing that final aspect, that final practical, to certify that they're ready to come, because you're the professionals and you've trained those individuals.
Well, without a clearly defined, sorry, this is right with this. My argument would be without a clearly defined rank and order of what people are actually going to be required to be in a specific level inside that trade. Speaking on expertise, right, which can be limited, especially in tattooing, where people can learn a style or a application, right? There's just going to be very small facets inside of it that people may be experienced in. Doesn't mean that there's going to be some type of valid argument that somebody actually knows what they're doing. They may know a subset of it, which would be my argument, right? And having somebody maybe that is qualified to sit there, have somebody come in from this, that could hopefully, like, my goal would always be a 0% complaint rate across the board. Not a 99, not a 98, right? Like 100% people really know what they're doing. And that Oregon in and of itself would be the place where if you came out with a certificate of understanding here, it would never be judged across the board, across the country, or across the planet. Like, people would know if you went to school here and you graduated, you really know what you're doing. There shouldn't be a question about it. That's my opinion. I know, of course, and I may be, preaching to the stars here, but that's
You're fine.
I don't know that a practical exam gets you there. But I mean, as far as complaints go, we don't have any safety and infection control complaints for tattooing, for body piercing, for earlobe piercing, for electrology.
So
It is 100%.
and just to speak from experience here, so I work as a research scientist and a PhD advisor for multiple universities developing tattoo related science stuff across the country. And one of the biggest problems we have, especially in education, is the understanding of actually how the skin heals a wound like a tattoo, aftercare, and general hygiene. So it would kind of be piggybacking on top of what Matthew had said there before, that until you could see somebody actually doing it face to face under what we would consider, like, air quoting, a master of that trade, sometimes these people won't actually be exposed as to what is the good or proper way of operating, as a, rather than just what their air quote, apprenticeship had taught them, which I think could be a pigeonhole for a lot of people, and potentially down the road lead to, massive issues, especially if cumulative loss of knowledge inside the industry starts to degrade to a point because things aren't being passed along, that eventually the rote practice that everyone is doing is going to be substandard.
Well, it's so HLO is holding them to task.
Well, I'm not
and
saying that
requirements.
I'm not saying that you wouldn't be, right, but we have a staffing issue that's going on. We have a lot of other things that are going on, and if it's a finance thing that would be driving this decision, I would say it would be easier to probably, like, beef it up rather than back it down.
No, it's not. You got your financials are okay. The issue is the auto fails, the lack of complaints, the lack of people going to do it, the lack of professionals doing it, and barriers. If I didn't already say that, yeah. So we want to get people licensed as soon as possible, and having an auto fail and having professionals take time out of their day. And I know we compensate them to a certain extent, but it's, we're just bringing it forward to the board to think about and let you know that this is what we're seeing and what our tasks are, and to work on a compromise with the board, so to speak, because we can address your concerns in the training. And if somebody goes in and does their practical and they already have bad habits, doesn't mean they're not, I'm gonna get through the practical and then go do what I want anyway. So with the stats that we have, we just don't see that at all.
I mean, you could do it where the practical exam needs to be, first thing I think is important is that when somebody comes out of a training program or education program, they're never experts, right? Baseline competency is what standard, it's when you get your driver's license, you're not an expert, you meet a baseline competency, and that's for any type of licensing. So we're not comparing this person right out of school to an expert. That's never going to happen. Two, I think if you wanted to, and you were worried that the supervisor that they had wasn't training them adequately, you could have a different supervisor monitor the practical exam. I mean, that could be written into a rule.
One of the things though with Sam though is Audrey made a good point in our meetings, is that in Portland, to take the time out of somebody else's day and their paycheck, and then in rural areas, it's very difficult to get that extra supervisor. So that's one of the things that we would have to consider in that.
Yeah, the fiscal,
consideration
we
as well.
look at that on the fiscal. I mean, they're just ideas.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that my argument, I guess, was noted on the record. And in response to all those things, like I think we have a lot of technology now, which we could utilize possibly to do the same type of practicals across the board without having to actually go into a facility. And the setup and offering of these things can probably be done remotely at specific times without having to pay a lot out of pocket, especially if we already have the infrastructure set up for it. And I mean, I know we need to move on, but I figured I had a coffee. I'm sorry. Like I just wanted to, I just got it out there. I apologize for hanging up stuff.
This is why we bring it up, is we need the professionals' opinions, and we'll share stats with you and opinions, things we're seeing here on the ground.
Yeah, that's a good point, doing it on, I mean, they do CPR online now, and so.
This is Matthew Holmes. I really like that idea too. That's really cool. Like if they did like their supervisor in their own facility as one of the proctors, and then remoting with another supervisor for a, we'll call it unbiased, different set of eyes. That's one of my bigger concerns, is if you've spent a bunch of time training somebody, and the way it's set up currently in Oregon, there aren't any actual schools. So most of the supervisors are training people that they know or have close relationships with. And that's always going to bring a more biased view to the test. Not to like call anybody out specifically. I don't know that anybody has done that, but that's my concern.
Okay, I think that we can definitely look at something like that.
Yeah. We'll take it back to the drawing board and bring you something at the next board meeting.
I love it.
Thanks for listening to me rant. I apologize.
No, hey, thanks for letting us throw a match on a fire. Gasoline on a fire. No. We knew Matthew would be passionate about it, and we were ready for it. We all had coffee this morning too, so. Okay, so coming up next is public interested parties. Matthew, you have a script, I believe.
I am looking. I know I have it. I thought I pulled it up.
I don't know what I did with mine.
I got it.
Okay.
At this time, the Board of Electrologists and Body Arts Practitioners will hear public and interested parties' feedback. Members of the public, please wait until you have been recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and affiliation to the board for the record.
Jamie, are you still on the phone? Oh, I can't even hear you. Hold on. Jamie, can you hear us now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Board members, can you hear Jamie?
Yes.
Okay, Jamie, go ahead.
All right, my name is Jamie Bloom. I represent the Oregon Association of Licensed Electrologists. I'm also on the board of the American Electrology Association, and I've been a former proctor for the Oregon electrolysis examination. So I have a few concerns. My first concern, which basically goes back to the same thing, are the people taking the practical exam, you know, if they're making mistakes, who taught them? Well, being a former proctor, what has happened is that the school teaches the applicant how to pass the test, all right? And so they'll do things that on the examination sheet, we can check off all the boxes. That doesn't mean they're a good electrologist. It means that they knew enough to pass. They're not, it's a beginner license, just like getting your car license. And that goes back to who are the trainers going to be. I believe, and this is why I really wanted to talk before you put in your vote. I really feel that only having 2 years experience as an electrologist doesn't give you the expertise to train new electrologists. Now, the AEA has, when they have chairside practice, you have to be practicing 5 years. And I would love that to be the same for Oregon. Of course, when I was at the RAC meeting, they felt that was way too much because, you know, they want to get new trainers in. They put it down as 2 years. I really, in my gut of gut, feels 2 years is just not enough. When you get a driver's license, you're not a good driver in the first 2 years. It takes many years. And the same thing for electrolysis. Putting that needle into the follicle the right way, it takes years. So when we have on November 7th, the next meeting, I would really like the board to consider raising the 2-year requirement. I would love 5. I know I'm not going to get that, but even to 3 years. People have been taught how to pass the exam. That doesn't mean they're good electrologists. On the other hand, I agree, we don't have any problems of infection control or gloving or cross-contamination. Does it happen? Yes, but we're here to protect the public. And I think the best way to protect the public is having trainers basically know what they're doing and how to, you know, teach, you know, infection prevention, and also the technique in electrolysis, also having the background on skin conditions, health conditions. And does anybody have any questions for me?
I like that. Sorry, this is Ryan. I really liked your statement. Thanks for making it. That was great.
Jamie, I just have a
Thank you.
comment. So just so I know that you understand, is that the public comment will be received from October 1st to the 28th. Written comment. So you'll want to put that in writing, send it to me, or you can attend the hearing. But you'll want to get that either on the hearing record or in writing so the board can consider that on November 7th. It's going to go the same as it did today. In fact, November 7th we
Great.
probably won't have public comment. So make sure you get that in
Right, so-
writing or verbally at the hearing.
So on by October 28th, I have to have a statement, to you, or who do I send that statement to?
To me,
All right, by October 28th, then statement.
So Bob, this is Cynthia. One of the things when we held the qualification committee, that they discussed that in detail, and there was a vote. There was 7 committee members. And the reason that they voted to make it the 2 years was because it was consistent with the Higher Education Coordinating Commission requiring teachers to only have 2 years of experience. So that's why they wanted to keep the training consistent with that and not creating higher standards for these individuals. And so there was a vote taken, and a lot of discussion back and forth on that. So just the reason why it is as it is recommended today based on the committee. And I believe also the Rules Advisory Committee as well, discussed that
Yeah,
thoroughly.
they did.
So
board members, did you hear that?
Yes, I did. Can I make a comment on that? On the RAC committee, there was only 2 electrologists. And what the other electrologists really felt that 5 years was too much. All the other people had very, very little knowledge of electrolysis, except the Brave Space people. Basically, they had their agenda to get as many electrologists formed, and that's why it went down to 2 years. It was never brought up for 3 years, and most of these people did not know the expertise that you really need as an electrologist. As I said, I would love 5 years to be consistent with the American Electrology Association, who looked into this matter when they do chairside training. But, 2 years, you're gonna have problems. If somebody's teaching and they don't know what they're doing yet, you're gonna run into problems.
thank you for that.
I will,
Jamie.
I will write this,
I don't get back and forth.
yeah, I will write this, to.
And there were 4
by
electrologists on the
October.
RAC. 4 electrologists on the Rules Advisory Committee out of 9.
And thank you for that, Jamie. I really appreciate that. And I just want to say during our qualification committee, we had 7 members that were all electrologists. And there was a vote taken, Jamie, at that meeting in regards to this issue. So out of those 7, all 7 were electrologists. And so that's why we took the vote, because I know there was a lot of concern in regards to the 2 years, but the RAC recommendation or the qualification recommendation with all 7 electrologists went to the RAC. And that vote was to keep it consistent with the Higher Education Coordinating Commission's requirements. So.
Right, but I remember it when we took the vote on the 2. There was Sheila Ahern and myself. We were the only 2 electrologists.
No.
You had one person who was thinking of going to school to be an electrologist, and all the others were, there was a person from, there were 2 or 3 people from Brave Space. I don't remember 4 electrologists
Okay,
being there for that vote.
okay, Jamie, this is Bob.
Yes.
Okay, so this was comment time. We're getting into a back and forth. So if you don't have additional comment to the matter at hand, then we're gonna move on, please.
All right, no problem. I said my piece. Thank you very much for letting me talk.
Okay, make sure you get Sammy that information.
I will do that.
Okay, thank you. Board, we have two people in the audience. Just one of you, or both of you want to make a comment? Okay, why don't you come on up and introduce yourself and who you're associated with.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tama Muller. I have been to quite a few of the last meetings that you guys held. The one reason we came down today was to see how the RAC was going for electrology and what the new rules and laws that you guys got established were. We saw a lot of good things in it that we're excited about, and we're hoping now that this is moving along, we can get back to the RAC for tattooing and piercing. So we're just putting that out there. We're still really excited to work on it. We're gonna take this information home today that we saw that you guys did all the work, and there's a lot of things that we've been asking for that you guys accomplished for this that I think will backtrack to the RAC that we've been working on for tattooing. So I'm excited to move forward and just looking for maybe some information if we have a plan for that. Now that the world is going back to normal, a lot of us are going to be traveling again, and it might be a little bit harder to nail us down for those meetings. So just a little bit of knowledge about when we might be starting that process again would be really, really appreciated at this point. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Bob, would you like me to address that?
Sure.
So this is Cynthia Murphy. One of the things is the Health Licensing Office has given the qualifications section a new position to assist in writing education, training, and examinations. Her name is Carrie Edwards, and she has been working with me for the last 3 or 4 months, and we are behind the scenes getting caught up in a lot of different areas. In fact, she has rewritten the body piercing written examination, and it will be available effective November 15th, which is after, or excuse me, before your next board meeting, but we will provide you additional information at your next board meeting. In addition, we will send information out. We will be gearing up to do the additional racks for the body piercing for the training programs. Actually, the training programs for body piercing was finalized. We just have to implement that and put that into place. But we will, I would say by February at the latest, start having our meetings again for the tattooing to look at that curriculum and the examination. So with this additional, and in addition, we have a current position open. Unfortunately, we did lose a staff member. So even though we gained one, we've lost one, but we should be recruiting for that position and have it filled hopefully within the next, I'd say 30 to 90 days. So we're really moving forward in the qualification section. And so you'll be looking forward to hearing from us soon.
Perfect. And just for once Cerinthia's qualification committee has met on tattooing, then just like electrology, then it'll go to my tarot rack. So there's this procedural, and then the board will weigh in on communities likely to be affected, blah, 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 blah. So once she gets hers done, then I'll come in and we'll start doing rules and getting that.
Olivia, do you want to come up? Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Olivia Britsweet, and I am also representing Reform Oregon Tattoo. Just coming to keep tabs on everything and to, see all of you again. It's nice to see everyone in person. I had a question about the RAC and if there are still more positions available, because I remember when the call out was placed, I think a lot of us were still in kind of, still like more so in the pandemic. And now that it's been pushed back, I feel like myself and other people are more available to put time in. And I saw that electrology had about 9 positions. So I was wondering what tattooing was like, since it's such a large industry, if there are more openings.
So basically all racks were dismantled. All professions, all racks after, as of January 1.
Right.
So we're starting fresh.
Okay.
So what the board will do is tell me, who is gonna be affected, if people of color, and then, so this House Bill 22933 dictates that we have to, have people on the committee, the Rules Advisory Committee of all shapes and sizes. So, just like with electrology, there's 4 licensees. And then I think there was 9 members, and there were 5 non-licensees. So we'll put the call out once they tell me who, and then I try to keep racks to 10 or less.
Okay.
But if we have to, we'll go with more.
Okay.
Wonderful. But yeah, so all disbanded and new ones. That doesn't mean old people won't be on the new rack. Definitely for continuity, I'll
Okay.
probably drag people over if they apply.
Great, that's wonderful.
So this is Cynthia, that I wanted to clarify, that is different from the qualification committees that have already been established. They will be the same. So I guess my question to you is Sammy clarified rack. Are you asking for us to open up the qualification committees as well?
Is that what?
No, I was participating in RAP. We were giving them like suggestions. The qualification, I thought was just the board, so.
Yeah, so let me explain just a little bit. So when we have a curriculum or an exam that we need to work with subject matter experts on, it's called the Qualification Committee. And it's the meat and potatoes of exam questions and content areas in regards to education. And so we really dive through the weeds. And then we go on to our recommendation to the RAC. And then Sammy takes our recommendations and then she works in the meat and potatoes of the rules, working with the Attorney General, making sure she's getting all of the individuals within the different equity
And inclusion.
inclusion, thank you, covered, that what we've done in the qualification goes to her in that final, she has to meet those comment periods, and so she takes it from there, all those fiscal impacts and such. And then we're here today, then we're at the full board level. The full board level then looks at what the qualification committee did, what the rules advisory committee did, and now we're in discussion, recommendation. Sam will go have our hearings, take public comment, we'll come back to the board, and that's when they'll do the final rules. So that's a kind of sum up that process.
Yeah, and an important thing is that qualification committees are not required and there's no specificity around them. They are what Cynthia, Bob, and the board say they are. If you're holding a rack, there's definitely law requirements around it, rule requirements. Through the APA, which is the Administrative Procedures Act, the Department of Justice, and then Oregon Health Authority also has. So they require we have a rack unless we get an exception. So, and those are law written hard and fast.
Yeah.
I can't unabide by those.
Okay.
Even if I wanted to.
And what I do at the qualification is I get those subject matter experts that work in that industry. So that doesn't cover me because those inclusions may have individuals that are representing a group and not necessarily have that expertise in tattooing. So that's why that does not, I'm in qualification and not required to follow those same guidelines.
Do you have any tattooers in the qualification committee?
Yes, when I do my, yes.
Okay.
In fact, I believe there was a makeup of 6 people and 4 of them for that tattoo, 4 were tattoo and 2 were body piercing that had interest in both.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I would be interested on being on either. So if there is an opportunity to be on qualifications, I would be very interested if someone drops out or if there's more room. And then when the RAC call out becomes, opens up again, can definitely make sure we get adequate members of the
Yeah.
community to help.
Yeah, join working on it, it felt like real progress, so.
well, what I can do since it's been so long is I can do another interest letter out to everybody, and then we can get, look at where we're at and who's willing to serve now and move forward, just get additional expertise on that. That would be the words, yeah.
Wonderful. All right, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Matthew? If you're talking, you're on mute.
I swear I'm good at technology.
All right, so that was public interested parties number 5, and now we'll move into executive session. If you you should have a script.
Yeah, I've got it up here. I was just babbling with my mic muted.
I've done it before, but don't do it when you're on camera. They'll laugh at you.
Bob,
All
how
right,
long do you think executive session is gonna be?
Shouldn't be all that long, I would imagine.
Half an hour out, just in case you ladies were interested in coming back.
We're about to head back to Portland.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Cynthia. Jamie, we're gonna go into executive session, so after Matthew reads the scripts, I'm gonna put you on mute. So don't be surprised if you're not hearing anything further. Okay, Matthew, go ahead.
The Board of Electrologists and Body Arts Practitioners will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660, Section 2F, and 676.590 for the purpose of considering information exempt from public disclosure at 12:37 p.m. on September 12th, 2022. Representatives of the news media shall be allowed to attend the executive session by conference call and will be provided further call-in instructions shortly. The public phone line will be muted for the duration of the executive session. Are there any representatives of the news media on the public phone line?
Done.
Recognizing there is no news media in attendance, the public phone line will be muted for the duration of executive session. We will return to open session before taking any final action or making any final decisions. We are now in executive session.
Your phone is now muted. To unmute, push star, then 3.
In case y'all didn't know, the phone's muted now.